The stars were dying. Queen stood at the great window of her command ship, the Silver Crown, and watched the darkness eat another sun. It happened slowly at first. The light flickered, then dimmed, then vanished completely. Where a bright star had burned for billions of years, now there was nothing, just empty black space. The void swarm had come. No one knew where they came from. No one knew what they wanted. They were not alive in any way that made sense. They were not machines. They were something else, something older than the oldest civilizations, something hungry beyond understanding. They moved through space like a disease, consuming everything they touched. Stars, planets, moons, ships, nothing escaped them. Pressed her hand against the cold glass. She was young for a queen, only 40 years old. Her silver hair was tied back in the traditional style of her people, and her dark eyes held a weight that no ruler should carry. She had inherited the stellar dominion 5 years ago when her mother died. Back then, the Dominion had been the greatest power in this part of the galaxy. 1,200 worlds, 10 billion citizens, a fleet of 50,000 warships. Now she had 300 worlds left. Her people were dying by the millions each day, and her fleet was burning in the darkness outside her window. "Your Majesty," a deep voice said behind her. Did not turn around. She knew that voice. It belonged to General, her most trusted commander. He had served her mother before her, and his loyalty was beyond question. But even loyalty could not stop what was coming. "How many did we lose?" she asked quietly. Was silent for a moment. That silence told her everything. 8,000 ships, he finally said. "The third fleet is gone." Admiral went down with his flagship. Closed her eyes. Admiral had been a good man. He had taught her how to play strategy games when she was a child. He had bounced her on his knee and told her stories about brave warriors from ancient times. Now he was dead, swallowed by the void like so many others. "And the swarm?" she asked. "Still advancing. Our weapons hurt them, but not enough. For every piece of darkness we destroy, 10 more take its place. They will reach the inner systems in 3 weeks, maybe less." 3 weeks. 3 weeks until the void reached her. 3 weeks until everything her ancestors had built was erased from existence. Finally turned to face. The old general looked tired. His gray beard was longer than regulations allowed, and his uniform was wrinkled. Dark circles hung under his eyes. He had not slept in days. None of them had. "What do our allies say?" she asked. His face twisted with something that might have been anger or might have been despair. "The Eternal Collective has sealed its borders. They say they need to protect their own people first. The High Senate of Orion sent their condolences, but no ships. The machine courts did not respond at all. So we are alone." "Yes, Your Majesty, we are alone." Walked past and sat down on her command throne. The throne was made of white metal and precious stones, a symbol of power that now felt like a joke. What good was a throne when your empire was dying? Around her, the bridge crew worked at their stations. Young officers monitored sensors and communications. Technicians ran calculations that always came back with the same answer: defeat. Everyone moved with quiet efficiency but could see the fear in their eyes. They were all afraid. They were all waiting to die. "Send out another distress signal," said. "Maximum range, all frequencies." A young communications officer named looked up from her station. "Your Majesty, we have already sent 147 distress signals. No one has responded." "Then send 148. Hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, Your Majesty." The signal went out into the darkness, a cry for help that knew would go unanswered. Every civilization that was strong enough to help had already refused. Every civilization that was weak had already fallen. The Stellar Dominion was the last major power still fighting the void, and they were losing. General stepped closer to the throne. "Your Majesty," he said in a low voice, "we need to discuss evacuation." "Evacuation to where?" asked bitterly. "The void is spreading in every direction. There is nowhere to run." There are distant regions, unexplored space, perhaps. Perhaps we can hide for a few more years before they find us, shook her head. That is not a plan, that is just a slower death. It is better than no death at all, better than extinction. Looked at her old general. She could see that he was trying to save her. He did not care about himself. He had made peace with death long ago, but he cared about his queen, about his people. He wanted to give them a chance, even if that chance was small. What about the outer territories? She asked. Is there any civilization we have not contacted? Frowned. There are a few primitive species in the far reaches, nothing significant. One of them is called humanity. They come from a system called Sol, but they are young, Your Majesty, very young. They have only been traveling between stars for a few hundred years. Their technology is crude. Their ships are small. They would be no help against the void. Have we asked them? No, there seemed to be no point. Leaned back in her throne. Outside the window, another star flickered and died. The darkness was growing. The end was coming. Send them a message anyway, she said. Send a message to everyone, even the primitives, even the ones we think cannot help. We have nothing left to lose. Bowed his head. As you command, Your Majesty. He walked away to give the orders and was left alone with her thoughts. She thought about her mother, who had ruled with such strength and wisdom. She thought about her father, who had died in battle when she was young. She thought about all the kings and queens who had come before her, building the dominion piece by piece over thousands of years. And she thought about how it would all end here with her, in the darkness between the stars. Somewhere in the distance, another sun went out. Watched it die and felt something die inside herself as well. Hope, perhaps, or faith, or the belief that the universe was fair. She had prayed to the old gods. She had begged the ancient powers for help. But the gods were silent and the powers did not care. The void was coming, and no one was going to save them. Or so she thought. The days passed like funeral marches. Queen spent most of her time in the war room, surrounded by maps and screens that showed the advancing darkness. Each morning brought new reports of lost worlds. Each night brought new lists of the dead. The numbers had grown so large that they stopped feeling real. How could anyone understand the death of millions? The mind simply could not hold that much grief. The distress signals continued to go out, one after another, into every corner of known space. And one by one, the responses came back. All of them said the same thing: no. The Eternal Collective sent a long message filled with beautiful words about shared sorrow and universal tragedy. They expressed their deep sympathy for the stellar dominion. They promised to remember Queen and her people in their sacred ceremonies. But they sent no ships. They sealed their borders and waited for the storm to pass. The High Senate of Orion debated for 3 days before sending their response. Some senators had argued for intervention. They said it was their moral duty to help. But in the end, fear won over honor. The Senate voted to preserve their own strength. They wished the Dominion well and said they would pray for a miracle. The machine courts never responded at all. Their cold logic had calculated the odds of survival and found them unacceptable. Why waste resources on a lost cause? Better to watch from a distance and learn what they could about the enemy. General delivered each response to Queen personally. Each time, she listened without expression. Each time, she simply nodded and asked if there were any other messages. The last of our allies has refused, said on the 10th day. Everyone we contacted has said no. Was sitting in her private chambers, looking at a small picture of her mother. The old queen smiled out from the image, frozen forever in a moment of happiness that seemed impossible now. Not everyone, said quietly. What about the primitives, the humans? Shifted uncomfortably. We sent them a message as you commanded, but Your Majesty, you must understand, these creatures are barely civilized. They have only a few hundred ships. Their weapons are generations behind ours. Even if they wanted to help, they could do nothing against the void. Did they respond? Not yet, their communications are slow. It may take more time. Set down the picture of her mother, then we wait. But waiting was the hardest thing of all. Each hour that passed was an hour closer to extinction. Each day was another world lost, another million lives ended. The void did not slow down. The void did not rest. It simply consumed endlessly, mindlessly, without mercy or purpose. On the 12th day, something changed. Was reviewing evacuation plans when young officer burst into her chambers. The girl was breathing hard, her eyes wide with something that had not seen in weeks. It took her a moment to recognize it. Excitement. "Your Majesty," gasped, "we received a transmission." Stood up slowly. She did not dare to hope. Hope was too dangerous now. "From whom?" she asked carefully. "From the humans, from Earth." Felt her heart beat faster, but she kept her face calm. "What does it say?" His voice shook as she read the message. "It says, 'We received your distress call. We are coming to help. Hold your position. We will arrive in 14 days. Message ends." The room was silent. Stared at the young officer, waiting for more. But there was nothing more. Just those simple words sent across the vast emptiness of space from a species she had never met. "That is all?" asked. "That is all, Your Majesty." General entered the room moments later, having heard the news. His expression was troubled. "Your Majesty, I must advise caution," he said. "The humans are not capable of helping us. Their fleet is tiny. Their technology is primitive. This message is either a misunderstanding or a cruel joke." "Why would they joke about such a thing?" "I do not know. Perhaps they do not understand the scale of what they are promising. Perhaps they think the void is something smaller than it is. Whatever the reason, we cannot rely on them." Walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Fewer stars than before. The darkness had eaten so many of them. But some still burned bright, defiant against the approaching end. "Have you ever met a human?" she asked. "No, Your Majesty. Very few people have. They keep to themselves mostly. They are a young species, still finding their place in the galaxy." "What do we know about them?" Thought for a moment. "They are soft, fragile. Their bodies are weak compared to most species. They live short lives, less than 100 years on average. They have no natural weapons, no armor, no special abilities. By all measures, they should not have survived at all." "And yet they did." "Yes, they did. No one is quite sure how. They spread across their home system very quickly, then began moving to other stars. Some scholars say they are simply lucky. Others say they are stubborn beyond reason. They refuse to accept defeat, even when defeat is certain." Turned back to face her general. "That sounds like exactly what we need right now." "Your Majesty, please, I do not want you to build false hope on an empty promise. The humans cannot save us. Nothing can save us. We must focus on what is possible: evacuation, preservation of knowledge, survival of at least some of our people." "And I am not abandoning that plan," said firmly. "But I am also not going to ignore the only people in this entire galaxy who said yes when everyone else said no. Even if they cannot help, they deserve our respect for trying." She walked past and headed toward the bridge. Officers and crew members stepped aside as she passed, bowing their heads. The Queen moved with purpose now, with energy that had been missing for days. When she reached the bridge, she stood before the main communication station. "Send a response to the humans," she commanded. "Tell them we receive your message with gratitude. Our position is marked. We will hold as long as we can. Please hurry." Officer typed the message and sent it into the void. Stood at the center of the bridge, surrounded by her people. They all looked at her with something new in their eyes. Not hope exactly. Hope was still too fragile. But something close. Something like the first light of dawn after a long and terrible night. 14 days, General said quietly. The void will reach our in 12. "Then we need to slow them down," replied. "Prepare the remaining fleet. We will buy time. Every hour, every minute, every second we can give the humans is worth 1,000 ships. The orders went out. Ships began to move. Crews prepared for battle. And somewhere far away, across the endless reaches of space, a small fleet of primitive human vessels was racing toward them, answering a call that no one else would answer. Queen did not know if they would arrive in time. She did not know if they could make a difference. She only knew that someone was coming, and that was more than she had dared to believe possible. The darkness continued to spread. The void continued to advance. But for the first time in weeks, Queen of the Stellar Dominion felt something other than despair. She felt something almost like faith. Far across the galaxy, in a small solar system that most star charts did not bother to include, Captain read the distress signal for the 20th time. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and steady hands. His black hair was cut short in military style, and his face carried the marks of a hard life, a scar across his chin, lines around his eyes, a nose that had been broken more than once. He was 42 years old, which was middle-aged for a human, and he had spent most of those years in space. The message from the Stellar Dominion played on the screen in front of him. It described the void swarm in detail. It showed images of dying stars and burning fleets. It gave numbers that seemed impossible: billions dead, hundreds of worlds destroyed, an enemy that could not be stopped. And it ended with 3 simple words: "Please help us." Sat in the command chair of his ship, the Morning Star, and looked around at his bridge crew. There were 12 of them, all human, all watching him with expressions that ranged from fear to determination. "You have all seen the message," said quietly. "You know what it means. This is not our fight. The Stellar Dominion is not our ally. They have never helped us, never even acknowledged us. Their queen is asking for help from species she considers primitive. And the enemy she faces, this void swarm, has destroyed civilizations 1,000 times more powerful than we are." He paused to let his words sink in. By all logic, we should ignore this message. We should protect our own worlds, our own people. We should let the Dominion fall and hope the void is satisfied with what it has taken. Navigation officer looked up from her station. She was young, barely 25, with quick eyes and quicker hands. "But we are not going to do that, are we, Captain?" Smiled. It was a tired smile, but a real one. "No, we are not." He stood up and faced his crew directly. "I know what the odds are. I know we are outmatched. I know that by any reasonable measure what I am about to ask you to do is suicide. But I also know this. Someone is crying for help and no one else is answering. If we turn away now, what does that make us? What does that make humanity?" The bridge was silent. Everyone was waiting. "We are going to the Stellar Dominion," said. "We are going to fight the void swarm. And we are going to show the galaxy that humans do not abandon those in need, no matter how hopeless the cause. I am not ordering you to come with me. This is volunteer only. Anyone who wants to leave may do so with no shame and no consequences." No one moved. No one spoke. Then slowly, Lieutenant stood up from her weapon station. Was small for a human, with short hair and fierce eyes. She was the best pilot in the fleet and possibly the best shot. She had served under for 10 years, through battles and disasters that should have killed them both. "Captain," she said, "with respect, if you think any of us are staying behind, you do not know us at all." A wave of agreement passed through the bridge. Officers nodded. Some laughed. The fear was still there, but it had been pushed aside by something stronger. Felt his chest tighten with emotion. These were his people. This was his family. And they were willing to fly into certain death because it was the right thing to do. "Thank you," he said simply, "all of you." The orders went out across the human fleet. It was not a large fleet, only 340 ships in total. Most of them were small, designed for exploration and trade rather than war. But every captain who received the message said the same thing. Yes. Yes, they would come. Yes, they would fight. Yes, they would answer the call. Within hours, the fleet was assembled. 340 ships of all sizes, crewed by humans from every colony in their small territory. Engineers worked through the night to prepare weapons and engines. Soldiers checked their equipment and said goodbye to their families. Chaplains offered prayers to whatever gods people believed in. And captains sent a message to Queen, "We are coming." The journey would take 14 days at maximum speed. 14 days of travel through empty space, with nothing to do but think about what waited at the end. Some crews spent the time training. Others spent it resting, saving their strength for the battle ahead. A few spent it writing letters to loved ones, messages that might never be delivered. Captain spent most of the journey studying the enemy. He watched every piece of footage from the stellar dominion. He analyzed every battle report. He tried to understand the void swarm, how it moved, how it fought, how it consumed. What he learned frightened him. The void was unlike anything humanity had ever faced. It was not an army. It was not a nation. It was more like a force of nature, a galaxy-wide disease that ate light and matter and life itself. The great civilizations had thrown millions of ships against it and failed. Their advanced weapons had done little damage. Their brilliant strategies had been useless. But notice something in the reports that others might have missed. The elder races fought the void with caution. They used careful formations, long-range bombardment, organized retreats. They fought to minimize losses, to preserve their fleets, to survive as long as possible. They fought like people who expected to lose. Set down the reports and stared at the stars outside his window. Humanity was different. Humanity had always been different. They did not fight to survive, they fought to win. They took risks that seemed insane. They charged into danger when wisdom said to retreat. They refused to accept defeat even when defeat was certain. Maybe that would make no difference. Maybe they would die just as easily as everyone else. But maybe, just maybe, it would be enough. On the 10th day of the journey, came to see him in his quarters. She brought 2 cups of coffee, a luxury that was running low. "You should be resting," said as he accepted the cup. "So should you," sat down across from him. "The crew is nervous. Not about dying, they have made peace with that. They are nervous about failing, about arriving too late, about not being enough." Nodded, he felt the same thing. "What do you tell them?" "I tell them the truth. We might fail, we probably will, but we are going anyway because that is who we are. Humans do not give up. Humans do not turn away. And even if we die, we will die fighting for something that matters." "That is a good answer." Smiled, "I learned it from you." They sat together in silence, drinking their coffee and watching the stars blur past. In 4 more days, they would reach the stellar dominion. In 4 more days, they would face the void. And the galaxy would learn what humans were made of. On the 14th day, the human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Dominion space. Before them, the darkness spread like a stain across the stars. Behind them, everything they had ever known was waiting for them to return. Captain stood on the bridge of the Morning Star and opened a channel to all ships. "This is Captain to all human vessels. We have arrived. Remember why we are here. Remember who we are. And remember this, today we show the universe that humanity answers when no one else will. All ships prepare for battle. Let us go save a queen." 340 ships moved forward into the darkness. The battle for the stellar dominion was about to begin. Queen saw the human fleet arrive on her sensors, and her heart sank. 340 ships. That was all. 340 small, primitive vessels against an enemy that had destroyed millions. The stellar dominion had lost 8,000 ships in a single battle, and these humans thought they could make a difference with 300. General stood beside her on the bridge of the Silver Crown, his face grim. "I told you, Your Majesty, they cannot help us. This is a gesture, nothing more. A noble gesture perhaps, but meaningless against the void." Did not respond. She watched the human ship spread out on her display, taking positions around the approaching darkness. They looked so fragile, so small, like insects trying to stop a storm. A communication request came through. Accepted it, and suddenly she was looking at a human face for the first time in her life. Captain was not what she expected. He looked ordinary. No special markings, no impressive features. Just a tired man with kind eyes and a firm jaw. He could have been anyone. He could have been no one. "Queen," he said, bowing his head slightly. "I am captain of the Earth Coalition. We received your call for help. We are here." Struggled to find words. "Captain, I thank you for coming, but you must understand the enemy we face." "We know what we face." His voice was calm. "We have studied your reports. We know the void has destroyed civilizations far greater than ours. We know we are outmatched. We came anyway." "Why?" The question came out before could stop it. Why would anyone fly across the galaxy to die for strangers? Why would anyone answer a call that everyone else ignored? It made no sense. Smiled. It was a strange smile, full of something that could not name. "Because you asked," he said simply. "Because someone had to." Before could respond, alarms began to sound across the bridge. The void swarm was moving. Millions of dark shapes were spreading through space, heading directly toward the final battle had begun. "Captain," said quickly, "pull your ships back. Join our defensive line. We can coordinate our—" "With respect, Your Majesty, that is not how we fight." On the display, the human ships broke formation. Instead of retreating to safety, they accelerated forward, directly into the heart of the swarm. 340 vessels, charging straight at an enemy that outnumbered them 1,000 to 1. General cursed in disbelief. "They are insane. They will be destroyed in minutes." But something strange was happening. Lieutenant led the first wave, her small fighter diving into the darkness with impossible speed. The void creatures reached for her ship with tendrils of shadow, but she twisted away, spinning through gaps that should not have existed. Her weapons fired in rapid bursts, striking at weak points that no one had noticed before. The void creatures began to fragment. Pieces of shadow broke apart and dissolved. The darkness hesitated. Behind came more human ships, each one moving with the same reckless abandon. They did not stay in formation. They did not protect each other. Instead, they scattered like leaves in a wind, forcing the void to chase them in every direction. "What are they doing?" breathed. "They are confusing it," said slowly. "The void is not intelligent, it reacts to threats. If you stay still, it overwhelms you. But if you keep moving, keep changing, keep attacking from unexpected angles, it cannot adapt fast enough." On the display, the human ships tore through the swarm like fire through dry grass. They were losing vessels, saw explosions bloom in the darkness, brave crews dying without hesitation. But they were doing damage. Real damage. More damage than the great fleets of the elder races had ever managed. Captain's voice came over the communication channel, steady despite the chaos around him. "All ships, maintain pressure. Do not give them time to reform. If you see an opening, take it." The morning star plunged through a wall of shadow, its weapons blazing. 3 void creatures tried to surround it, but spun his ship at the last moment, slipping through the closing trap. His gunners fired at point-blank range, tearing the creatures apart from within. Realized she was gripping the arms of her throne so tightly that her fingers hurt. She forced herself to let go. "General, order our fleet to advance. Support the humans." "Your Majesty." "They are showing us how to fight. Follow their lead, attack." The Stellar Dominion fleet, what remained of it, surged forward. 2,000 ships joined the battle, following the human example. They abandoned their careful formations and scattered across the battlefield, striking wherever they saw opportunity. The void swarm faltered. For the first time in months, it was not advancing, it was defending. On the bridge of a small human cruiser, Lieutenant guided her ship through impossible maneuvers. Her hands moved across the controls with perfect precision, her eyes tracking dozens of threats at once. Behind her, her crew worked in focused silence. Coming up on a cluster, her navigator, a young man named Jin, reported, "Looks like a breeding mass. If we hit it." "Then we hit it, push the engines harder, everyone hold on." The cruiser dove into the heart of the cluster, weapons firing continuously. Shadow shapes exploded around them. The ship shuddered as something struck the hull but did not slow down. She found the center of the mass, a pulsing core of pure darkness, and fired everything she had. The cluster detonated. A wave of released energy swept through the battlefield, destroying hundreds of void creatures in a single instant. Pulled her battered ship out of the debris and allowed herself a small smile. That is how you do it. The battle raged for hours. Human ships fell. Dominion ships fell. The void lost thousands of creatures, but thousands more kept coming. It was a war of attrition, and the numbers were still against them. But the humans did not stop. Every time a ship was destroyed, two more took its place. Every time the void adapted to a new tactic, the humans invented another. They fought with a fury that logic, a determination that bordered on madness. Captain coordinated it all from the Morning Star, which had somehow survived despite leading charge after charge into the thickest fighting. His ship was damaged, his crew exhausted, but his voice remained steady on the communication channels. "Push forward, do not let them reform, we are winning." And somehow, impossibly, he was right. The void swarm was retreating. The darkness that had consumed stars was pulling back, shrinking away from the relentless human assault. Queen watched in amazement as the tide of battle turned. These primitives, these fragile humans with their crude ships and short lives, were doing what the greatest powers in the galaxy had failed to do. They were fighting back the void. They were actually winning. As the hours passed and the enemy continued to retreat, began to understand something important. It was not about technology. It was not about numbers. It was about spirit. The humans fought like they had nothing to lose and everything to gain. They fought like their lives meant nothing but their cause meant everything. They fought like heroes. And for the first time since the void had appeared, Queen allowed herself to believe that survival was possible. The battle lasted 3 days. 3 days of constant fighting. 3 days of death and sacrifice and impossible courage. 3 days that changed the galaxy forever. When it was over, the void swarm was broken. Not destroyed completely, such a thing might never be possible, but shattered into fragments that scattered across the empty reaches of space. The great darkness that had consumed hundreds of worlds was retreating, fleeing from the combined might of humans and the stellar dominion. Queen stood on the observation deck of the Silver Crown and looked out at a sky full of stars. The stars were still there. They had survived. Her people had survived. Her empire had survived. She tried to cry, but the tears would not come. She was too exhausted, too numb, too amazed by what had happened to feel anything at all. General approached her quietly. He looked older than he had 3 days ago. They all did. "Your Majesty," he said, "Captain's ship is requesting permission to dock. He wishes to speak with you in person." Nodded, "Grant permission, and prepare a proper welcome, full honors." The old general bowed. There was something new in his eyes when he looked at her. Respect, perhaps, or gratitude, or simply the acknowledgement that everything they thought they knew about the universe had been proven wrong. An hour later, Queen stood in the grand hall of her ship, surrounded by her surviving officers and advisors. They had cleaned themselves up as best they could, but the signs of battle were everywhere: torn uniforms, bandaged wounds, haunted expressions. They had been through the worst experience of their lives, and they bore the marks of it. The doors opened, and Captain walked in. He was alone. His uniform was burned and torn. One arm was wrapped in medical bandages, and he walked with a slight limp. He had lost 150 ships in the battle, 150 crews who would never go home, 150 families who would receive the worst possible news. But he walked with his head held high, and when he reached the Queen, he bowed deeply. "Your Majesty," he said, "my fleet is at your service. What remains of it anyway?" Stepped forward. She was a queen, ruler of hundreds of worlds, leader of billions of people. She had been trained from birth to be dignified, composed, regal. But in this moment, all of that fell away. "Captain," she said, and her voice trembled, "you saved us. You saved my people, my empire, everything. We sent messages to every civilization in the galaxy, and they all refused. They all turned away. But you came. Why?" Looked at her with those tired, kind eyes. For a long moment he did not speak. Then he smiled, the same strange smile she had seen on the communication screen days ago. "Your Majesty, where I come from, there is an old saying. It goes, 'The measure of a people is not how they treat their friends, but how they treat strangers in need.'" He paused. "You were strangers. You were in need. We could not ignore that." "But the cost," whispered. "You lost so many ships, so many lives, for people you had never met, for an empire that never helped you." "The cost was worth it." His voice was firm. "Those who died, died for something that mattered. They died protecting innocent lives. They died proving that humanity stands for something more than survival. I will carry their memory with me forever, and I will never consider that memory a burden." Felt something warm and wet on her cheek. She raised a hand and realized she was finally crying. The tears she had been unable to shed were flowing freely now. "Captain," she said, "what can we give you? What can we possibly offer to repay what you have done? Name it, anything. Wealth, territory, technology, whatever you want is yours." Shook his head slowly. "Your Majesty, we did not come for payment. We did not come for rewards. We came because it was right. The only thing we ask is that you remember. Remember that when the darkness came and everyone else turned away, humanity answered. And if the time ever comes when someone else calls for help, remember what we did here. Remember and answer the call yourself." The hall was silent. Every officer, every advisor, every soldier present understood the weight of those words. This was not just a military alliance. This was something deeper, something that would reshape the galaxy for generations to come. Queen straightened her back and lifted her chin. She was a queen again, not broken, not desperate, but strong. "Captain," she said formally, "on behalf of the Stellar Dominion and all its peoples, I offer you our eternal friendship. From this day forward, humanity is not primitive. Humanity is not insignificant. Humanity is our ally, our partner, and our honored brother among the stars. What you have done will never be forgotten. Your names will be written in our histories. Your heroes will be remembered alongside our own. And should you ever need aid, no matter the cost, the Stellar Dominion will answer." She extended her hand, palm up, in the traditional gesture of her people. Looked at her hand for a moment. Then he reached out and took it in his own. "Thank you, Your Majesty. On behalf of humanity, I accept." They stood like that for a long moment, two leaders from two different worlds, joined together by the bonds of sacrifice and courage. Around them, officers from both species began to applaud. The sound filled the hall, echoing off the walls and carrying through the corridors of the ship. Outside, the stars burned bright against the darkness of space. Many stars had been lost. Many worlds had fallen, but many more remained, protected by an alliance that no one had expected. In the weeks that followed, the news spread across the galaxy. The Stellar Dominion had survived. The Void Swarm had been defeated, and the ones responsible were not the ancient empires or the great civilizations. They were humans, young, primitive, insignificant humans who had come from a tiny solar system at the edge of known space. The elder races watched and wondered. The Eternal Collective sent messages of congratulations and subtle offers of alliance. The High Senate of Orion suddenly found reasons to reopen diplomatic channels. The machine courts requested data on human tactics and strategies. But it was too late for them. They had shown their true nature when the darkness came. They had hidden behind their borders and let the Dominion burn. Now they would have to live with the knowledge that the species they had dismissed as primitive had done what they could not. Humanity had earned its place among the stars. Captain returned home a hero, though he never accepted that title. He said the real heroes were the ones who did not come back. He spent the rest of his life training new crews, building new ships, and preparing humanity for the challenges ahead. When he died at the age of 92, he was buried with full military honors, and Queen herself attended the funeral. Lieutenant took command of her own ship and spent decades exploring the far reaches of the galaxy. She found new worlds, met new species, and everywhere she went, she carried the story of what humanity had done. She became a legend in her own right, a symbol of the courage and determination that defined her people. And Queen ruled for another 60 years, guiding her empire through an age of peace and recovery. She never forgot the humans who had saved her. Every year, on the anniversary of the battle, she held a ceremony of remembrance. Every year, she told the story of how a young queen had cried for help, and how a small fleet from a distant star had answered. Remember, she would say to her people, remember the darkness, remember the despair, and remember the light that came when we needed it most. Remember the humans. Remember what they taught us about courage, about sacrifice, about what it means to be truly civilized. And if someone ever calls to you for help, no matter who they are, no matter how small they seem, remember us and answer. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. And somewhere in the endless darkness between the stars, the void swarm drifted and waited. It was broken but not destroyed. It would recover. It would return. But when it did, it would find humanity waiting. And this time, humanity would not be alone.